Hey, this is Allie Edwards, and in this video I'm going to walk you through how I am putting together Project Life for January 2019. As many of you guys know, I decided to mix things up this year, and instead of doing Project Life in a weekly format, I'm going to do it in a monthly format. So today is the 31st of January, and throughout the course of the month I've been thinking about how I wanted to approach this and jotting some things down. I've actually been using my story planner to make notes. So if you haven't seen these yet, I offer a story planner, which is a smaller sized album, and then we have notepads for projects and for story tracking, actually, kinds of writing down stories. And I'm doing it like this. You'll see on the video here, I've got January, I've got February, and just kind of writing down some different things that I might want to include in this overall story that I do for January 19. So since 2010, in 2010, I think was the first year that I did Project Life. So that's 8 years of weekly Project Life. Not all of it is done, but I've done a lot of it. And to move to only documenting or doing this once a month, or kind of telling a story of the more of the overall of the month versus those individual weeks is really, really different. And there were many times over this month where I was like, am I supposed to be doing something? Am I supposed to be, thinking about Project Life? It was actually a change to the way that I was going about my days, and I found that to be very interesting. What you're going to see that I have laid out here is a couple different things. I have 12 3x3 pictures here that I picked out from the month, and those actually kind of go along with this other sheet that I have here. This is my plan. What I want to do is I'm going to include 2 page protectors and then a 6x12. And so this is actually a 6x12 that is printed on a 13x19. This is what I use my larger Epson printer for. It is a Epson, SureColor P400. These are actually too small. Printer that you can print up to 13x19. So whenever I print full 12x12 or I print 6x12, I'm printing them on there. Now, if I was planning ahead better, I would have printed my 2 6x12s that you're going to see from me for the month of January on the same one, but I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do yet, so I printed one and then I printed the other one that you'll see in just a minute. So this is 6x12. Includes a photo, and then it includes a bunch of journaling. And it is actually a template that I made an offer for sale in my shop, a digital template, layered template. I don't even know how old it is. It's part of a pack of 6x12 layered templates. And I took off the word art that was on the top there, and I added in word art from the monthly stories. And I'll link these all in my posts too, so you can grab those if you want them. You can also use something like these. If you have stories by the month, you can use the January stories by the month card. That could fit into that space as well. But basically what I decided to do for this month, and my disclaimer here is that as I'm working on this, or as I worked on this month, one of the things that I decided is that I don't think, at least right now, I don't think that I'm going to do this the same every month or follow a formula every month. What will be the same is that I will be documenting the whole month at once, or pulling out some of the stories that I want to focus on from the previous month. But I don't care that if I use the same page protectors every time. Like, those are things that I'm not even worrying about. I'm deciding to let the stories lead the way a little bit more, and potentially the photos too. So one of the things that I did this month as I got started was I sat down at my computer and I looked at all of the photos that I have for January, all the photos that I took. And for me, the majority of the photos that I took in January were on my phone. So that was super easy. I just scrolled through there and I kind of got a sense of, okay, those are all the things that happened in January. And from there, I went ahead and I wrote up this journaling that is in this big, 2 big blocks here. Again, this is a Photoshop template. You simply add your photo in there, and you can add your own journaling as well. But I did that, and I really, I liked the process. A couple things I liked. One, I liked the process of reflection. I liked sitting down at one time, waiting until the end of the month, sitting down and then looking back and seeing what were the things that stand out to me? What were the moments that I wanted to remember from this last month? What were the things that I would like to focus on? And I liked that. That was something different. It was just a different way to approach it, and it felt really good to me. So that resulted in the journaling that's here, which I'll probably just put it into the post so you can see what the journaling says. And then choosing 12 photos that basically illustrate things that I'm talking about in my journaling. This is gonna go in, this is a 6x12 page protector, and I'm just gonna put this into the album, and then we'll talk more about what these other things are here. Let's see, get this in here. And then I have one photo enlargement that's a 6x12 that I'm going to put on the other side of this. And the reason why, so one of the things that I was thinking about as I was doing this is I wanted to think about what was my favorite picture from this month? Which one resonated with me the most? Which one was one, if I was going to blow one up, what would that be for this month? And the one that I decided to blow up is this one of me and Simon. And I posted it on Instagram the other night. We were reading together in his room. He was reading a Star Wars book because he reads Star Wars books. And I was finishing up a book called The Cuckoo's Calling, which is one of the 4 books that I read this month. And that one is actually by the author. The author is Robert Galbraith. I think that's how you say it right. But it's actually J.K. Rowling. And so that was a cool detective book that I really enjoyed this month. But I set it up, I asked him, I said, Simon, can I take a picture of us doing this? And he said yes. And so I set up my phone in, across from us on his dresser, and then took the shot. So it's got me reading, him reading, and then he has this portrait, the portrait that he has in his room. He used to have this really cool stormtrooper painting that some of you might remember used to be in his room. But now he has this poster of Kramer from Seinfeld in there, which is something that actually Aaron had when he moved in and had it in a closet. And at one point in time it came up and there was a whole story about it. And Simon wanted to have it in his room. So now he has this portrait of Kramer, which is in his room, which I think is really funny and so perfect for Simon in that he loves comedy. He loves joking and laughing. And I also like it because it's definitely a sign of him getting older, right? He's like, I don't want to have that other painting anymore. Now I want to have this picture of Kramer. So fun to see, I think, how kids' rooms change over time is a fun piece of documentation. So this is going to go on the back side here. I'm probably going to add something else to this, but I don't know exactly yet what that is going to be. As many of you guys know, if you've taken classes from me before, if you've watched process videos, a lot of times what I like to do is get a foundation set. And so in this case, the foundation really is the photos, right? I've printed out all of these photos. Now I've printed out this photo, and we'll talk about this page in a minute. But now that I have these, now I can add something else to them. I can add embellishments. I can add other pieces of the story if I want to, or I can just keep them there as they are. So let's talk about this second page. What I added in here is if you got the January stories by the month, one of the cards, the physical cards this year is from the digital kit. So you can still purchase the digital kit from last year. And it says January details, and then it says loving, watching, listening, eating, drinking, going. And so my idea was I sent a text to all of the kids and to Aaron and said, can you please fill this out? Can you please respond to these prompts? And then that's what I'm going to use as a big piece of my January storytelling. And so they all did that, which was super fun. So then I went in with the digital version of the card. I added in the text that the things that they told me that they wanted to have in there. And that's a big part of the story that I'm choosing to tell this month. So what I have right now is all of these with what they said, and I think that I'm going to use some stamps and going to stamp everybody's name. I did one, Erin did one too, on here in some of the colors that I'm using from this card, which is part of the January Stories by the Month. So next step in the process for me is going to just be figuring out how do I want to embellish these? What are things that I want to add on there, if anything? These ones I'm considering using a date stamp and just stamping the date on each one on this group of 12 here, considering that. I'm considering handwriting something on this picture of Simon and I, partly because the only place I have handwriting right now is right here. And then I will go ahead and go in and stamp all of these, and I'm going to adhere this one down on here. Actually, I can probably do that right now. This is just a picture of Simon from New Year's Day, and I'm going to add it onto this Life Right Now card. Again, most of the products that I'm using were part of the January Stories by the Month, and we're already releasing the February Stories by the Month is already released, and so that's what's actually available via subscription right now. That's my subscription that is really focused on kind of what's happening during the months of the year, rather than my story subscription, which focuses on a more specific theme. So I'm going to go ahead and add this right in there. I actually might run it through the sewing machine just so there's a little stitch right there. I don't know if you guys can see. Yes, you can. Okay. Well, I think I'm just going to stitch this right now. Having the sewing machine out is huge for me. Like if I don't have the sewing machine out, I wouldn't ever use it. But in this case, right now I have like some silver thread that's on there, and it's just always on. So I'm going to go in and just do a little stitch right across the top there. And that happens to be like a crisscross stitch is what it was set at, which I didn't even test that, as you saw, which is totally fine with me. But that gives like just a little bit of extra dimension to something, you know, this spread that is generally fairly flat. Now, a couple questions that I know that people are going to have right away is, number one, didn't you take more pictures than you are including here? And I would say, yes, I did take more pictures than what I included here. But when I am doing it only once a month, I am feeling significantly more intentional about the ones that I am adding in. There are some photos that I decided not to use in this project because I want to use them for other projects or longer stories that I might be telling in the story classroom, or maybe going to use for a different project. I have another workshop that's going to open for registration, in February, and that is for Hello Story 2. So that'll be coming in March, I think is when it's going to start. But I'm holding back a few things, because I want to use that for some of my storytelling. All right, so what I'm going to do next, I'm going to find an alphabet stamp so that I can stamp everybody's names on there. I'm going to decide what I'm going to do with this, and then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do with these, which I think is probably going to be using the date stamp on there. I'm pretty much thinking that's what's going to happen. The date stamp that I'm using this year is a little bit bigger than the one that I've used in the past. My old one stopped at 2018, so I had to have that end. But I think that's what I'm going to do next, is just kind of figure these things out. I will, of course, have some sort of index tab on here. Another thing I want to remind you, what I said earlier, is that in the coming months, I may do stuff completely differently for the month. Like it might look more like a traditional layout, or it might have way more photos, or it might have way less. I don't want to say I'm going to do something specific and then not do it. I want to just be a little bit more free, I guess, in my process for working through this time. I can tell you though that I love that I'm doing this once. I'm doing it once a month. I love that I don't feel like I have 4 weeks to catch up on. So for me personally, this feels like a really good switch up. Ask me in a couple of months. We'll see how I'm feeling about it then. If I feel like I want to switch it up again next year, I may totally do that. I might go back to weekly. I don't know. As of right now, I don't think so. I'm kind of really liking this and liking taking off that that just kind of undercurrent of pressure of like, oh, I need to be working on that other thing. So, all right, I'm gonna dive in and share my process as I go. Okay, so first step for me here was simply stamping everybody's names, and I am using a stamp set that I believe was available with a story kit, potentially the type story kit. I think that's when we last had it available. We are talking about potentially adding it and offering it again in the future as well, because it's just a really fun, simple, universal type-based or typewriter-based typeset. But I am using 4 different colors there. I have the red, which is Pendleton, the green, which is Willamette, the navy blue is Deschutes, and the yellow is a new ink color that I will have in my shop available next month with the Week in the Life release. So sometimes people ask me, how come you don't lay the letters out all on your block first? And I just like having more control over where the letters go, or in some cases less control, I guess. I was going for a little bit more of a messy look than trying to have it in a straight line. But I liked mixing up the colors. The colors went with the colors that were part of the January Stories by the Month kit there that you can see on that one card specifically. So being able to just stamp everybody's names on there I thought was fun, and bringing in that little bit of color. Again, obviously I also could have done that digitally because these cards were all printed out, but I like being able to have some things that I am doing by hand, and that's what you are seeing right here. We also, if we don't have it right now, that circle stamp block should be back in the shop and available soon. All right, so one of the things that is really important to me in memory keeping is this idea of bringing in other people's voices. And that's one of the great things of using a card like this, where you can definitely have people fill in their own information, or you can have, you can do it yourself just like I did and type them up. Usually in December Daily, my December project, I almost always do something where I have everybody write down or respond to some sort of prompt on to cards, because I love having a look at what their handwriting is like at specific points in time. There you can see me sliding the 3x4 cards into the pockets. Some of them I am trimming down just a little bit, imperfect science of getting 3x4s or printing out 3x4s there. And then I'm also adding one of the chipboard ovals from the Stories by the Month kit onto that card with the picture of Simon. That's the one that I ran through the sewing machine. Next up, I'm adding an Avery index tab along the edge there. I almost always add one of those when I have some sort of an insert, and I didn't stamp anything on the insert at that point in the process. I wanted to wait until I knew a little bit more about what I wanted to add on there. So next up, I took those 3x4 photos over to my desk, and I used my rolling date stamp to stamp the date of each one of those images. I did it at my desk because it was really easy to look in my photo management program, which I use Aperture, to see what the actual date was that the photo was taken. And so then I just stamped with StazOn onto each one of the photos, and I really like that look. Again, it is something that you could do digitally, but I like kind of the messiness or the opportunity for a little bit of mess. What I'm doing next is I am going back through and looking for stickers that I might want to add onto these 3x3 photos. These are all stickers that we have either offered in my shop or that have been part of the Stories Kit subscription. I love word phrase stickers, so I'm often finding those and pulling those out. I can't remember which set the transparent ones that I'm using right now are from, but I did add those onto a couple. I like the opportunity to add just a few things onto the photos. And one of the things that you'll see in my process here is that there are a couple times where I actually add like a chipboard piece on and then I end up pulling it off. this one I added on here, and then later on in the process you'll see where I took it off. And partly that was because sometimes in these smaller pockets, when you add the chipboard pieces closer to the edge, which is generally where I like to have them, they tend to buckle a little bit inside the pocket. So there's another example, the one that I just slid in that's a picture of Erin. It's hard to see on the video, but it definitely was like kind of puckering the pocket a little bit, and I didn't like that look. So you'll see me take that out. But this heart, I took a chipboard heart from one of the sets and added that onto the photo of Simon with his cake there. That one I kept because it was a little bit farther in from the edge of the photo, and wasn't getting the same result with the pocket. So I'm basically at this point in the process just looking back through or looking through those stickers that I have and looking for something that can be added onto the photos. I don't want this process to take a really long time, so I'm not looking for the perfect sticker or the perfect chipboard piece or the perfect anything. I'm just trying to find something that feels good to me, that maybe resonates or relates in some way or another to the story of the image itself. So I used some of the plus signs on there. I just like those as an icon. And then using some of these red stickers. These were from the Joy Story Kit, I believe. And I trimmed them down a little bit before I put them in there. So there you can see that's where I'm taking the chipboard piece off. Actually, I think I trimmed it first, added it back in there, and then I end up taking it out. And I think that you'll probably see, but I reprint that picture like 3 more times because I take stuff off of it and then I change how it is and then I change it again. I think, there's one time. We'll see if we can count how many times I do that. But that's sometimes just what happens, right, as you're doing it. So I go back over to my computer, I switch it up. You'll see this red sticker that I'm putting on there right now. I ended up putting it at a diagonal, and then I think I didn't like the diagonal because everything else is horizontal or vertical. I think that was the reason why I ended up taking that one off. I did pull the chipboard piece off that picture of Simon and Anna right there and then added a red word phrase sticker. I think part of the reason so you can see there's number 3 of that picture of Erin. I think part of the reason why I pulled that other chipboard sticker off as well is because once I had a couple of those red stickers on there, I wanted a few more because I like to have a few different repetitions. So inside the Avery Index tab, I ended up using a stamp from the Joy, actually from that the banner Days of the Week. I think I looked at the Joy one first. So the stamp inside there is, I think it says document something, but I'll link that banner stamp set as well. It had some good smaller pieces. Next up, I was dealing with the 6x12 and thinking a little bit about what did I want to add on top of there. I opened up my drawer and looked through some of my other embellishments, and I found these cork speech bubbles, which were a part of I believe they were an add-on, Story Kit or Stories by the Month add-on. And I decided to use red line tape, adhering this rubber piece onto there. And then I went to my computer and I looked to see, at first I was going to just write journaling about Simon and I reading together, but then I decided to look up quotes from Kramer, from Seinfeld, because that's who that poster is. And I found one that was totally perfect. I rounded the corners and then adhered that down onto the speech bubble. So that ended up feeling like the perfect thing to add on to that story. And I really like how that one turned out. I can't read the quote as I'm just doing this overview here, but you'll be able to see it in the pictures in the post as well. But that was pretty funny, and Simon is funny, and so I liked how that story ended up. And there again, just having to trim things down, that's just a common thing that happens to me as I'm going about the process of doing this anytime there. So I think that's putting it together there. All right, that's a wrap for 2019 January in Project Life. Come back next month and we'll check out and see what kinds of stories I have told for February. I'm looking forward to seeing how that ends up, what I end up tackling, and I'm looking forward to playing around with Project Life in 2019. Also, if you're interested in more storytelling ideas like this video, check out my Story Kit subscription. You can learn more via the link below. All kinds of good stuff happening in that classroom.